The folks, while the senator is working his way up to the stage, I'd like to give a big shout out to the VFW Post 8641 for helping us out today. You guys have been great on short notice. This is wonderful. And I also want to give a shout out to each and every one of you because this is a wonderful turnout on a work day on a Friday afternoon. Thank you for coming out. I'm sure all of you, like myself, are quite tired of what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. today. We are thirsting for principled leadership in this country once again. We're looking for people who will not cave on their principles, that walk the walk, talk the talk, and will not fail the American people. We're looking for people who believe in the Constitution, the foundation upon which this entire country was built.
For this crowd, the Constitution
We're looking for people
get cheers.
who believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We believe in people who believe in the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, which is the protector of our entire Constitution. For without it, we do not have a Constitution. Senator Cruz has a record. Yes, he does have a record. That record is for all to see. He's a person who kept his word when he went to Washington, and he'll keep his word to you now.
Okay, finally made it to the podium.
It is with great pride and my honor to introduce to you the very first announced presidential candidate for this country, Senator Ted Cruz.
God bless the great state of New Hampshire. And God bless the VFW. So I want to make sure I didn't get lost on the way here. Is this the Ready for Hillary gathering? Although I got to say, the men and women here look pretty ready for Hillary. There actually was big news from Ready for Hillary this week. They announced their first major hire, the head of email security. So Lois Lerner now has a job. I am thrilled to be back in New Hampshire. I am so honored, I'm humbled that y'all would take time away from your families to come out and spend some time together. This week has been a pretty quiet week. On Monday, I announced my candidacy for President of the United States. I have to say the reaction this week has been nothing short of breathtaking. It has been electric. We chose Monday for a couple of reasons. Number one, this Monday was the 240th anniversary of a 38-year-old lawyer who stood up in Richmond, Virginia and said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Somehow that's a sentiment that folks here in New Hampshire understand well. And Monday was also the 5th anniversary of the President signing Obamacare into law. Let me tell you what's happening across this country. Men and women across this country are waking up. They are energized. We are seeing, Jack, we're seeing this across the country, an army of courageous conservatives standing up for this country. This campaign is going to be about a positive vision going forward for our country. You know, this country was built on a promise. It was built on an extraordinary idea that our rights, they don't come from government, they come from God. And our founding documents, the Declaration, the Constitution, were all designed to rein in government to protect those God-given rights. Two, 300, 400 years ago in America, the basic idea of America was that our kids would have a better life than we did. And their kids would have a better life than they did, and their kids a better life than they did. You know, we're at a moment in time that's extraordinary. Today, for the first time in the history of our nation, a majority of Americans believe that our kids will have a worse life than we did. 65%. There is this sense that the promises this country was built on, somehow more and more people are feeling they're slipping away. We can't quite hold on to them. This election is going to be about something very, very simple. Reigniting the promise of America. We can do that by doing three simple things. Number one, bringing back jobs and growth and opportunity. Economic growth is foundational to everything else in this country. For 6 years, we've been trapped in stagnation. You know, there's a great meme we put out online. Reaganomics. You start a business in your parents' garage. Obamanomics. You move into your parents' garage. You want to sum up a jobs and opportunity agenda, that's the difference right there and there. We need to get back to the kind of environment where small businesses are growing and flourishing and creating jobs. 2/3 of all new jobs, they come from small businesses.
Most of them in Texas.
A whole lot of them are in Texas. But you know what? A whole lot more of them are going to be up in New Hampshire and in New England and across this country as we get the federal government out of this place.
Texans get it. Make the federal government inconsequential.
Now, am I the only one here who's noticed that it sometimes seems like government is a one-way ratchet? It always gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It never goes the other way around. With Democrats, it grows like crazy. And with Republicans, it grows a little more slowly. Not much. Look, I had a friend of mine once who suggested a bumper sticker. Republicans, we waste less. Oh, I like that sign. We can do better. That's exactly right.
Sign read, Republicans, we can do better.
It's not that complicated. All we have to do is get back to the principles that have made America the greatest country in the history of the world. If you look throughout history, the levers that government has to facilitate small businesses creating jobs are tax reform and regulatory reform. Every time Washington sends tax collectors and the regulators to descend on small businesses, we see stagnation and misery. I was out once in West Texas, was talking about, the thing when regulators come down on you with like locusts. Problem is you can't use pesticide on the regulators. And this old West Texas farmer leaned back and said, "Want to bet?" When it comes to tax reform, there are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible. We need to move to a simple flat tax. That's fair and that lets every American fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And if we do that, we should abolish the IRS. Now, there are about 90,000 IRS employees. We need to put a padlock on that building and put all 90,000 on our southern border.
Maybe Mexico will take
media, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But think about it for a second. Imagine you traveled thousands of miles through the blazing sun. Imagine you swim the Rio Grande, and the first thing you see is 90,000 IRS agents. You turn around and go home too. And when it comes to regulatory reform, there is no federal law or regulation that is killing more jobs, that is causing more people to be hurting, to be in part-time work, to be losing their health care than Obamacare. I am convinced, come 2017, a new president in the White House is going to sign legislation repealing every word of Obamacare. And in its place, we'll adopt health care reforms that keep the government from getting between you and your doctor, that make health insurance personal, portable, and affordable. Competition, local. Look, y'all understand, nobody in Washington, those words make no sense in Washington, D.C. Tell you a second critical element is we need to defend our constitutional liberties. We need to defend the First Amendment, our free speech rights, our religious liberty rights. We've seen the IRS demanding of citizen groups. Tell us what books you're reading. Tell us the content of your prayers. The federal government has no business asking any American the content of our prayers. We need to defend the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. Vice President Joe Biden. You know the nice thing? You don't need a punchline. I promise you, try it. The next time you go to a party, just walk up to somebody, say, Vice President Joe Biden, and close your mouth. They will crack up laughing. But Vice President Joe Biden said, if anyone attacks your house, just go outside with a double-barreled shotgun and fire both barrels in the air. Now that is very, very good advice. If it so happens you're being attacked by a flock of geese. We need to defend the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. We need to defend our rights to privacy. Rather than targeting the cell phones and emails of law-abiding citizens here at home, we should be focusing on stopping bad guys abroad. We need to defend the 10th Amendment. Or as President Obama calls it, the what? The fundamental protection that says the powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people.
Like I said, Texans get it.
That means their core responsibilities the federal government is supposed to do. It should defend our nation. It should secure our borders. And there are a whole bunch of other areas where the federal government has no business, areas like education. And we need to repeal every word of Common Core. Education is too important to have it dictated by unelected bureaucrats in Washington. It should be at the state level, or even better, at the local level, where parents have direct control over what's happening. And finally, we need to restore America's leadership in the world. For 6 years, we have seen America receding from leadership in the world. It has created a vacuum. And into that vacuum have stepped bad actors across the world. Right now, our friends don't trust us, and our enemies don't fear us. We need to stand by our friends and allies, and that includes standing unshakably alongside the nation of Israel. You may have noticed the Obama political team went over to Israel to try to help run the campaign to defeat Prime Minister Netanyahu. And you're exactly right. They used taxpayer money funding a 501c3 to actively campaign against the elected leader of a close ally. Well, you know what the result was? Netanyahu won by a massive margin. I'm reminded of a few months ago, Jay Leno was in Jerusalem, and he was doing stand-up, and he said, "So, most popular name in Israel right now?" Noah. Least popular name in Israel? John Kerry. And we need to stand up and defeat radical Islamic terror. You cannot defeat radical Islamic terrorism with a president who's unwilling to utter the words radical Islamic terrorism. ISIS is the face of evil. They are crucifying Christians right now. They are putting people in cages and lighting them on fire. And this is a president who, when we saw the horrific terrorist act in Paris, referred to it as a, quote, random act of violence. There is nothing random about radical Islamists going in with butcher knives to a kosher deli to murder Jews because of their Jewish faith. And when 22 Coptic Christians were horribly beheaded, the president described it as 22 people who were killed because of their Egyptian citizenship. Yeah, I've got to say, Pope Francis powerfully spoke out and said their blood confesses Jesus Christ.
Right.
A critical element of defeating radical Islamic terrorism is we have got to rebuild and strengthen our military. I'm thrilled to be here at the VFW. I'll tell you, in 2 weeks I'm going to be back home in Texas at Fort Hood, where they are going to finally be presenting the Purple Heart to the victims of Major Nadal Hussain. For 5 years, the Obama administration's refused to do that. They categorized that as, quote, workplace violence. Now, I'll tell you, in the Senate, I introduced legislation to change that. And we were able to build bipartisan support on the Senate Armed Services Committee. And over the opposition of the Obama administration in December, the Senate passed legislation making those heroes who died eligible for the Purple Heart, and that's why they're receiving it. And we need a president who will stand up to the nation of Iran and make clear under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. You know, you may have heard a few weeks ago 47 senators signed a letter to Iran. A very simple letter that just made clear how our Constitution works. In order to make binding law in this country on the Constitution, there are two ways and only two ways. One, you sign a treaty and have it ratified by 2/3 of the United States Senate. Or two, you pass legislation through both houses of Congress that the President signs into law. You know, and I will note, we've got some young people here. Anyone in junior high who's taken a civics class knows that. Well, at least before Common Core, you're right. Unfortunately, the reaction from this administration, the hysteria from this administration, and one of the most revealing responses was Iran's Foreign Minister Zarif, who wrote back and said, "You do not understand. Heads of state speak for the nation in every respect and can bind their nation in every respect." And it is true, in Iran there is a so-called supreme leader, Khamenei, who can bind the nation in anything he wants, and if you disagree, he will have you shot. But one of the incredible, wonderful, powerful things about the United States of America, we don't have supreme leaders in this country. A couple of weeks ago, I found myself on MSNBC. Was doing the Morning Joe show. I figured, what the heck, come at me.
Be ready for it.
But in the course of that, they asked, "Do you have any regrets about signing the letter?" And I said, my only regret is, like John Hancock, I didn't make my signature bigger. So that the Ayatollah could read it without his reading glasses. Every one of us is here because we love freedom. Because we love our kids. We love our grandkids. And every one of us wants to believe in the miracle of America. We know this firsthand. We know this in our own families. In my family, my mom, Irish and Italian, working class, the first in her family ever to go to college. My dad, a Cuban immigrant who was imprisoned, who was tortured, beaten in a Cuban jail, and came to America with nothing, with $100 sewn into his underwear. I actually don't advise carrying money in your underwear. Well, then you get accused of money laundering. His first job, washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. You know, when I was a kid, my father used to say to me over and over again, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? And that is why we are here. I want to close just by telling you I am amazingly, powerfully, profoundly optimistic.
Yes.
Optimism sells.
I'm optimistic because of each of you. The men and women in this room who will not let freedom go. You know, we launched this campaign 5 days ago. Our objective when we launched Monday morning at Liberty University was we hoped to build enough support nationally to raise $1 million in the first week of the campaign. Well, I'm sorry to say we failed in that one. We raised $1 million in the first day. Within 3 days, we broke $2 million. Now listen, our friends in the media will tell you, this Cruz guy, he can't win. You know, I think my favorite point that made this was the New York Times. Anyone here read the New York Times? No. All right, so actually, some sensible people. But the New York Times said Cruz cannot win because he is hated by the Washington elites.
I think that gives you an idea of what the crowd thinks of the Washington elites.
I got to admit, I wanted to Xerox that and mail it to all 300 million people. My only question was, would the FEC consider that an in-kind contribution? Hope in this country is not going to come from Washington. Listen, I have seen it firsthand. I have been there. It is broken. And the biggest divide we've got in this country, it's not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between career politicians in both parties and the American people.
Angelo Code will call your office.
But I am optimistic because of you. I am optimistic because of the unlimited potential of free men and free women. And the way we will turn this country around is courageous conservatives rising up to demand we will take this country back.
Yes.
I am here today asking for your support, asking for your help.
You have it.
I would ask every one of you, the only way we can win, listen, I cannot win this. Only you can win this race. I'm asking every one of you to sign up and volunteer and visit with your friends, visit with your neighbors, visit with your families. And say, are you happy with the path we're on, or do you want to get back to the principles that made America great? And I'll promise you two very simple things. Number one, I will tell you the truth. And number two, I will do what I said I would do.
Croc TV.